Hello, everyone, and welcome to Wednesday Build. This is episode 1.46. And today we're going to be discussing the topic, try before you buy. Use a tool for a personal project before you migrate everything over. These are just hard-won lessons from my experience going through lots of different tools. So we're going to be featuring Airtable and SmartSuite, but I'm also going to be mentioning things like ClickUp. We're going to go over Monday.com. Also, a couple other ones as well as I think of them and go along. So my name is Brittany Hernandez, and I am a lawyer, a professional no-code, low-code developer, a legal tech educator, and the global ambassador to law schools for Gavel. So as I mentioned, we're going to really be diving into a couple of different tips that I have when you're thinking about trying out a new tool. And a lot of this actually comes from the fact that I went to the No-Code Summit in Paris recently, and it was so much fun, and it was great to meet everyone. But it also made it to where I was super interested in trying a ton of different tools, and my mind was like, oh, I can use this for this and I can use this for that. And it's so exciting to see all of the different problems that people are trying to solve with technology, and it's especially fun when you get to be a part of that community and get to meet everyone in person, and you get really excited. You also have people from the community giving testimonials and doing different talks, and so it can just really hype you up about all of these different tools. So in this in this particular conference, I got really excited about trying SmartSuite and Xano and Glide and all of these different tools. And then I, of course, have my favorites, but it's always fun to kind of have your stack and your base and then just peek your head over the fence every once in a while to look around and see what's out there, try a couple things, and then pop your head back down and take in what you can, along the way. So there are going to be a couple of different tips that I have for you, and they're going to be around these 5 points: usability, features, all-in-one, master of none, integrations, customer service, and pricing. So these are some of the things that I like to think about and consider as I'm, trying out a new tool. One thing I might add here is around just a bonus tip is around time boxing this experience, because I have had many weekends spent with hours and hours of getting super excited about a tool, spending a lot of time trying to put everything in it and build on it, and then realizing actually these couple of quirks about this particular tool actually make it a deal breaker for me. So I'm not going to invest all of my time and energy migrating all of my business needs over to this particular tool because of these couple of things. So unless these things are fixed, I'm not interested in migrating everything over. So these are just a few things that I've kind of learned along the way, and you'll have your own experiences as well that you can add to these considerations. So one of the things that as I mentioned, was trying out through this experience of going to the No-Code Summit. I got to meet the founder of SmartSuite and the CEO, as well as his wife, Tara. And so I got to see a lot of different talks about it. So I was curious about SmartSuite, but I didn't want to just be like, before I even tried it, to say it's going to solve all of my problems. It's going to be so much better than Airtable. So I'm going to go ahead and my first project is going to be to migrate all of my data over from Airtable into SmartSuite, because even though I really like them and as people, and I think it sounds great from what I could, hear and see at the conference, I just thought it might be useful, since I've had experience with doing this type of thing in the past, that it would be better to start with a free account and start with a small project so I could understand how this tool works. And this is kind of where this try before you buy, use a tool for a personal project before you migrate everything over comes into play. So I want to feel out a platform in a smaller scale, low risk project before I try to migrate everything over and become a little bit more familiar with it and what the quirks are and what the benefits are and all the different features and stuff. So I recommend that you try this as well in your future kind of tool shopping experiences. And the thing around time boxing, like I mentioned, is maybe set a time limit for yourself when you're trying out a new tool, because you might get so excited about one and spend 2-3 hours trying to play with it and figure it out. And then at the end of the day, you decide not to use it. So just maybe give yourself a 1 or 2 hour limit on a particular day, and you say, I'm going to like sit down and I'm going to actually try to figure out this tool. I'm going to, you know, maybe try a little personal project or something small before I decide that this is the tool we're going to use, and then start migrating everything from whatever other tool or tools that you're using. So for this particular one where I was saying between like Airtable and SmartSuite, this is what SmartSuite looks like. And then if we go over to, I'm going to just show you a demo version of my, actually, let me show you, this one's fine. So this is kind of like a demo Airtable account. So it doesn't have any real data in it. This one does have some real data in it. So I'm just going to show you some personal ones that aren't showing you any of my like personal details. But that's just to say, like, I just wanted to see from a feature to feature direct competitor experience, how do these two stack up with each other? And what are some things that I like about them, some things that I don't like about them? And every tool is going to have things that you don't like. So nothing is going to be 100% perfect. It's kind of like when you go shopping for a dress or something and you're like, well, I love this part, but it's a little bit tight here. I would prefer it to go a little bit out. And that's why we have things like tailors. So maybe this will allow you to kind of compare and contrast different features and know that nothing's going to have every single thing that you want, but does it have, it's also like picking a partner. I was just thinking, like, also for me as well, like, I'm sure I'm not perfect and that my partner thinks I'm perfect in a lot of ways, but that there are things that irk him. So just know that tools are the same way and it's always going to be that way. But what has more than, you know, more features than not that you need, kind of in the overall weight of things. So in this particular direct comparison that I was doing, I just wanted to feel out the platform for what it's offering, and then also using and trying out the mobile app and the differences between these ones as well. And the main thing that I was interested in learning about, if I were going to use one over the other, is how, and even though I put this as number 3, it's actually quite high on my list. So I'm going to rearrange this as integrations is probably one of my most important features and considerations when I'm considering a new tool. So does this tool like work with everything else that I use and that I won't get rid of? So for example, what are my core products? So the core products that I use are things like HubSpot, things like Clio, things like Gavel. So Softer is another one that I really care about being able to integrate with or to use this tool with. So if a tool doesn't integrate or act as a data source for anything else that I use, it's not really likely that I'm going to use that tool. So integrations is probably, or like the compatibility. So let's just say like integrations / like compatibility is going to be one of the highest consideration factors for me. So is this tool compatible with the other tools, or does it integrate with my other tools? One of the other ones that I would suggest you take a look at when you're considering this is whether a tool is available on Zapier or Make if you use Make. In my particular case, and I love Fabian from the CEO of Make, but I tend to use Zapier just a little bit more because of the fact that it has some tools that I use, whereas Make doesn't have some of the tools that I use. So that's why that's so high on my list of factors to consider is compatibility and integrations. So for example, if you want to look for SmartSuite, for example, like, okay, we have something in Zapier for SmartSuite. Do we have Gavel? So we can link these two things together because if they're both in Zapier, they're both here. So we can also see, like, if we were gonna, you know, want to add different features together, seeing what actual actions are available for these two things together. So let's say, for example, SmartSuite and pairing it with Gavel, then we can see, okay, when a record is created, then I want you to create and populate a new session or whatever else. And actually, that's a pretty good pairing, to be fair, because let's say, for example, you have a form that's like an intake form and this is for, you know, whatever else. You want it to be able to automatically take that information and populate a Gavel workflow. That would be pretty powerful. Or if you want it to make it to where when a workflow is completed in Gavel, then I want you to create or update a record in SmartSuite, then et cetera, et cetera. So you could also try comparing the ability and actions and triggers that you have available to you within Zapier, for each tool that you're considering. So you can see, okay, I have these options for this tool. What about if I wanted to have, what are the options that I have when it's Airtable, or what options do I have when I'm connecting this to something else? So how many things can I do that I might like to do? So for example, when a new record is updated or created, then I want you to do any of these things. So that's one of the things I would definitely consider first. And when we talk about creating a personal project first, and that kind of trying before you buy element of this, in my particular case, I wanted to just test out the features, as I mentioned. So in this case, I actually started, my first thing I ever built in here was just an inventory, because I'm going to be moving at some point in the next couple of months, and I need to just sell a bunch of stuff. So I have like way too many things. So I just kind of was going through all my clothes and my shoes and things like that. And I was just like, okay, let me just try using this for something that's very low risk. Like, I could kind of take it or leave it. If it doesn't work, I could just delete it and it wouldn't even be that big of a deal. I just want to kind of play with it, but it also actually serve a purpose that's real, so that I can see if it's solving a problem for me in this scenario. So in this particular scenario, I had about 57 items that I want to sell, for example, and I want to be able to differentiate between these posted ones and the ones that I haven't done yet. So if we look at the ones that I've posted, and actually this one I have posted here, I can see that I have it to where I've posted these all on, these different platforms. In this particular case, I can actually update this one as well to see, like, I actually just have these all invented now. But you can just see, like, what does it look like? What does it feel like? What does it, how does it kind of operate? In this particular case, you could say for SmartSuite, it's very similar in a way to like a combination of like a Monday.com plus a Notion plus an Airtable plus a lot of other types of tools. So, you can kind of compare and contrast those different pieces and decide like what's important to you about their features. So let's talk about like features as the next piece. So I guess I didn't really consider the order of these as much, but now I'm really thinking about it. I guess in this particular case, integrations really for me is more, compatibility is really number one. I wouldn't really consider a tool unless it works with the other tools that are core to my stack. Features being the second one, which is like if you're trying to decide between 2 different platforms or 4 different platforms or whatever else. I think one of the things here is like, how many things can I do with one tool? Because if you have to use 5 different tools, you're scattering your information across several tools, and you can spend a lot of time trying to find something when you could just have one tool that can do all of those things. And you're also saving money because you don't have to have 10 different tools that you're paying for in order to do one flow of things. So one of the things about that is, for example, why I would use an Airtable or SmartSuite or something like that over Google Sheets, even though Google Sheets does integrate and is compatible with a lot of things that I use. One of the things that I really like about a SmartSuite or an Airtable is that they have a lot of things that are extra to just kind of, not just because I actually think Google Sheets is extremely powerful, but from like an all-in-one like task and project management plus database plus Sheets plus all these different things. And also you could say Google Drive and like the whole suite is kind of like a whole version of that, but just kind of, thinking about what do you need this thing to do and what features become super important to you when you're trying to do them. So one of the things that I think is a benefit of a Smart Suite over an Airtable, for example, and right now I'm still using both because I'm still deciding and trying and going through this process as far as like, am I going to migrate everything over and use one over the other? Is I do quite like the fact that a linked record in Smart Suite can link to any record within your whole account. So it doesn't have to be just like another record from like another table within a base, for example, within Airtable. So kind of seeing like what is the thing that is going to make it to where you choose one thing over another. So sometimes it's not always a feature, sometimes it's that compatibility knockout. So if it's like, if I love, let's say ClickUp, for example, which I'm just kind of very just getting familiar with and, you know, playing with, and I'll go into in a second. So I wouldn't say I'm like in love with it or something. I would just say like, it doesn't act or serve as a database or like a data source for Softer, which I use a lot for really important things in my stack. So it's not necessarily, even though I could connect things through Zapier and things like that for other tools, it wouldn't necessarily be my core tool for what I need for Softer, for example. But I might use it for other things, but it's not necessarily going to serve that base and purpose. Whereas another tool like a Smart Suite or an Airtable can do many of the same things as ClickUp, and it also has the ability to be compatible with Softer. So these are just like a couple of, you know, ways that I think about and go about making a decision when I'm like deciding which tool is going to get my money. You know, when we have limited resources, we want to consider which resources we're going to be able to, where we're going to put our resources. So one of the other things around features that is a huge deal for me is actually around formulas and how things are like added together, because one of the other projects that I've been doing as a personal project to try these tools and compare the tools is my budget. So I was trying to use ClickUp for my budget, but found I had a really hard time with the formulas and the functions of these formulas to do something very basic. So that was very frustrating to me. And like, it actually was one of the things that actually made me kind of go away from this tool, even though I otherwise quite like it. And I would say one of the things I'll add here is around like maybe under this usability section is like a desktop app. I know this sounds really like weird, but I really like desktop apps. So even if the tool is really amazing, it is kind of like an irksome type of thing if they don't have a desktop app. So just a tip for everyone out there listening, if you care at all what I think, I would highly recommend desktop apps because I think we use them a lot. I mean, people just really use them a lot. I use Slack every day, Canva every day, like Zoom has, you know, app. I have Notion, Asana, ClickUp, like all of these, Airtable here, all of these have desktop apps. So I think that's Monday.com as well. So I feel like all of these, even though they have a web version, I think a desktop app version is really highly valuable, as well as a mobile app, because I use the mobile apps quite a lot as well. And from a features perspective, you know, some of the functionality being available in like the web app or the desktop app, but not on the mobile app, could sometimes be not a deal breaker necessarily, but definitely not, you know, helpful when I'm trying to consider whether I'm gonna you know, use a tool or not. So let's say, for example, if you can see the sum of something of a column on the desktop app, but you're not able to view that on the mobile app, that's a little bit weird to me. And I feel like it would be more helpful if I could see the same information in both views. So just keeping that in mind as well. So that's kind of around that usability piece. But from a features perspective, I actually think that ClickUp does a really good job. I just feel like their usability and the features, like how they actually function, are a little bit strange to me. So And the reason I say that is like, for example, I was trying to do some addition across the board, and I think I've deleted it now just because I was playing with it and then I just deleted stuff and was like playing around. And the thing that I like about ClickUp is the fact that it does have kind of like such an all-in-one approach, and like, and I don't think I think in this particular case, there's a couple of things that I would just recommend that they improve upon. One is that like, I do think their formulas are not super helpful. And like that ability to, like from my experience when I was playing with it, it would do it like you have to do them for like each particular row rather than being able to do like column level stuff. So there were some little things around there that were really hard for me because I use formulas a lot. So anyway, that's just to say I'm not like saying that this isn't a good tool. I actually really like this. So I want this tool to be something that I use. But I do like that they have like docs, they have spaces and dashboards, but they also have these like your ability to create like kind of like a Miro. You have like a Miro board inside of here as well with the mind maps. So you can have like a mind map, you can link everything together. It's like, it's like it's kind of like, this one's like a Miro plus Notion plus Asana plus Airtable plus everything. And that's why I really like it. And it even has these like cool things like a goal where you can like, for example, I'm going home in December for a visit to my family. I can check out my relevant docs that looks like Notion, for example. I can see like, I can kind of go through and see which ones I want to check out. And everything can really link together super well within this tool. So I do think that they are very, very, very close to what I would want to use. There are just some usability like and functionality things that kind of hold me back from using it, as well as the pricing piece. So if we pull up the pricing, like when do I start paying and for what? I think this one is actually quite important to me because I found like I was trying to do something quite basic and it was like prompting me to upgrade. And I feel like when you have such robust free plans from competitors, I think you have to kind of give in a little bit to the freemium model, in the sense that like, although you can have like a gated feature model, when everyone else is kind of offering a free forever plan, like Asana has a free forever plan, Airtable has a free forever plan, Smartsheet has a free forever plan, like Notion has a free forever plan, like everyone has like a free forever plan that's very good and helpful for people who are like small teams, for example. Like I'm just me, and so I don't really have like a whole team to work off of and like to manage and all of these users that I need to have. So I just feel like when you have so many competitors that are offering something that is similar and they have enough things to justify me like still using them over you, I just feel like that's something that could be considered from a business model perspective, because I'd happily like upgrade at a certain point, but I should be able to do like some basic things without having to upgrade, in my opinion. So the other thing I'd mention is around customer service, and something that I use way more than I ever thought I would is an in-app chat feature, an ability to submit tickets, and then also around like product feedback. So how do they accept product feedback? How do I submit tickets? Like, how do I ask for help when something's wrong? And how responsive are people when I ask them for help? So in the particular case of SmartSuite versus Airtable, in this particular case, I do think that SmartSuite's customer service is very good. So I've submitted tickets just because I'm like I said, I'm pretty new to SmartSuite from like a user perspective. So I'm still playing with it and like learning how to use it. And I do really like it. But there's some things like I don't know how to do, or I'm trying to figure out, or I think it's supposed to function a certain way and it's not really functioning the way that I thought. And so I do use this quite a lot. So I feel like their system is very good and their team is very responsive. And by contrast, I have submitted like a ticket, you could say, to let me just go into here for a second. I have gone in and submitted like a ticket for Airtable, and they actually never got back to me, I think. So that's something to consider as well. You can see like that you can like message support, contact sales, and so on. But I had like quite a business critical issue happen between like a link between Airtable and Software, where it was like kept kicking off my authentication. And so it was like breaking all of my apps on Software, and it was like not Software's fault. And I told them about it, and they were like, it's actually like happening on the Airtable side. So I think they never got back to me. And I'm not saying like I actually really like Airtable still. I'm just saying that is a consideration that I highly value, is like, how is your customer service? How responsive are you? And like, if something just broke and like my business can't function now, that's pretty bad. And if you never get back to me, like that's pretty sucky. So the other thing I'd say around here is around that product feedback. So how accessible have they made the ability to give feedback about the product, and what do they do with it? Like, do they actually look at it? Do they care about it? Or is it just like kind of a show of, we care what you think? So one of the things I do think that SmartSuite does well is they have what's called like a canny board. So it's looks like this. And so they have like it's like a public roadmap. So they're showing you as their customers, what do they have under review? What do they have planned? And what do they have in progress? So we can also see like all of the different feature requests. You can upvote and you can make comments and you can add a new one. So I think this is really useful. Gavel has this as well. It's called a wish list. So this is called a note board. So Note and Canny do the same type of thing, where you have, you have the ability in this particular case to see like what's planned. So copying pages from one workflow into a separate workflow is planned here. I can look at what is in progress. I can see customizable emails, fix needed for document tagger, blah, blah, blah. I can see what's completed. So I can see that all of these things that people have wanted them to do have actually been completed. Like, this is the #1 most requested thing, and they just released this actually recently. So that's repeating items, customizable client portals, etc. So you can see like how often, or like not necessarily how often, but like how much are the teams that are building this, how much are they actually looking at what their customers are saying? Let's look at what are the most voted ones, and they go through and they're actually like making it to where they can see how many people have upvoted each of these different things. So personally, I think that that Gavel does this really well. They actually do consider what people put on here. You can suggest a feature, and when you type it in something, you can attach files and so on and give that feedback. If you wanted to create one of these yourself, I think note boards are like a flat fee of $25 or something. Yeah, so let's see, $29 a month. They used to be a flat fee, but looks like they have a tier now. Okay, so just basic. So they have $29 a month, Pro is $69 a month, and then they have like an enterprise one. I think this is changed from when I last looked at it. But they also have, for like comparison purposes, like a canny board is more expensive from what I remember. So they do have a free one, but once you want to pay, like have to start paying for it, it's $360 a month billed yearly, and then they have a business plan. So just that's kind of like a huge difference. $69 a month versus $360 a month. But the difference also is being that like Note doesn't have a free plan. They only have a 10-day free trial, whereas Canny has a free forever plan that is, has some limitations, but it's actually like quite good. Anyway, that's just to say, if you're on the other side of this, watching this from the perspective of someone who builds tools rather than somebody who is a consumer of tools, these boards are really helpful. But it's also helpful to know as a user that these boards exist and that people are using them, and that in SmartSuite's case as well, they're also like taking the feedback and actually implementing them. So if you can look for these types of things, I think they are very useful, and you get notified if you have a little account that this, like for example, when SmartSuite as a data source for software, this is something that I voted on, I get a notification when it's completed, which was just recently. So I can go in and I can see like what other people have said. I can see what the announcement is and so on and so forth. So that is really useful as well to consider. So, so kind of just like from a matter of like summarizing what we talked about, one of the things I would say too is I made the mistake of not doing this method of kind of like doing a smaller project first when I was playing with Monday.com. So I kind of like went full force into like just putting all of our stuff in here and like adding everyone on here. I think originally I was going to use Notion, and then it was just kind of like I didn't want to have to build everything from scratch, even though I love Notion a lot. But I kind of was like, okay, guys, we're using this tool, before I actually played with it enough to understand like how I wanted to use it and like whether it was the right tool for us. And I ended up having to go through this whole process to migrate off of it. Even though you can like export a lot of things, like trying to export it and putting it in a different place with a different format can sometimes be a little bit of a challenge. So in this particular case, I was migrating from Monday to Asana. And then I ended up using Asana with my team for a while. And then that's kind of like what we liked better. And kind of the reason for that was just because Asana, this is actually a pricing consideration, because even though I think Monday.com is a very good tool, like I think it's very well executed and has a lot of features that Asana doesn't have. In this particular case, like Asana was just a better business decision from a price standpoint for me personally, because I only had like one team member plus like a partner that I was working on a project for, and I only really needed to assign like a very basic number of tasks per week to my employee, and then I only like had to do kind of a project-based thing with my business partner. And so it kind of didn't make sense for me to be paying like for both of them to be on the platform every month, when I really only needed like a very small set of things on the platform. So what I ended up doing was moved us over to Asana, because they actually let you collaborate with up to 10 teammates for free, whereas it was only 3 of us, and I was already paying like $36 a month for just us. So I just felt like I didn't need to pay that in order to like use the features that we were using, and that Asana gave us those same features that we were using for $0. So it was just purely a pricing decision and like a matching of what we were actually using. So I think from the perspective of like, if you had maybe a larger team and like you needed all of the features, I do think that it's a really good tool. Anyway, so and like I said, all of these tools are obviously like successful and there and created for a reason. And I have a lot of respect for all of the people who've created them. And I think like I'm obviously very biased in my own needs. So everyone's going to need something different. And so I in particular have a very core set of tools that I personally like use and talk about a lot and demonstrate. So I need things to work with other tools. But if you don't have that limitation, then maybe integrations and compatibility is not your number one concern or consideration. Maybe that's number 5, or maybe it's not on your list at all, and that's completely okay. But in my particular case, this is a very high priority for me. And so when I'm trialing a new tool and trying something out, I want to make smaller, more personal projects before I migrate over my business projects, because it allows me to test and play and see how these different tools coexist and collaborate with each other in my kind of digital environment. So it's just one of those things where integrations and compatibility is a really high priority for me. Pricing is also a high priority for me, but I will pay for something if it solves the problem that I'm looking to solve. So customer service is actually also high for me as well. And that kind of ability to give product feedback, because I'm very highly engaged in the creation of these tools, because you can kind of see from whether they have a note board or candy board or some kind of public roadmap that they care what you think, because at the end of the day, like, the whole idea of building a tool is supposed to be solving a problem for a user. So if they're not listening to their users, then it kind of shows you that they're not really approaching this process in the way that they should, because what you say should really, really matter, because you're the one at the end of the day who's using it, and you're trying to solve they're trying to solve your problems. But if they don't know what they are and how you're using the tool and what's not working for you, then they're not going to be able to build the right tool for you. So these are just a few considerations that I would suggest: integrations and compatibility, features, whether something is trying to be an all-in-one tool, whether that's working for them or not, usability. In my particular case, I really love a desktop app. So shout out to all the people who are creating desktop apps. And for those of you that don't have them, I think you should. Pricing, when do I start paying and for what? That's a huge consideration as well. In my particular case, for example, when I was saying about, I have a really small team. So, and now we're finished with one of the projects and I don't have an assistant anymore. So it's literally just me. So I don't want to be paying for something where it's really meant to really be paid when you have several users. So I'm looking at pricing and whether they have a free forever plan. And I am willing to pay for tools, in a particular setting, or when I feel it's actually useful for me to pay for it, when the features that I need are behind a gate, for example, or kind of like a paywall. That's fine, but it should make sense, I think, as well. Like I mentioned, where it's like, if I should be able to do something quite basic without having to upgrade. And then customer service and product feedback. And just remember that bonus tip of time boxing, which is you can spend a lot of time and energy into trying out a new tool, and then it can not work for you and not be the right fit. So just maybe give yourself a limit of like, I'm not going to go over 2 hours playing with this new tool until and that's by that time I really need to decide whether I'm going to use it or not, because, well, I mean, that's completely up to you. But in my particular case, I can definitely spend way too much time playing with these tools because it's fun. Okay. Anyway, so long story short, that is all for today. We're going to go ahead and wrap up. If you have any questions, you can reach out to me. I'll give you my contact information in a moment. I hope this was useful. So this has been an episode of the Wednesday Build, where we have live episodes every Wednesday. And then we also have Code Word Hex out every Tuesday, along with the Tuesday Forecast, which is a free weekly newsletter. I have Gavel certification courses and courses in software and Airtable, Go Full Page, with more to come. We also have a community called Command Global, and there's also an active Slack group for Gavel. So thank you so much for being here with me live. And for those of you that are on the recording, hello. And we're going to be meeting again next Wednesday, November 22nd at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And we're going to be talking about how we interrupt this broadcast, plans, and then reality. So this is going to be a fun one. It'll be probably pretty short, but we're just going to go over this idea of sometimes we can plan for something to happen and then reality hits and we have to be able to pivot. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or via email at brittany@command.pro. And for any inquiries relating to Gavel's law school program, you can reach out to me at brittany@gavel.io. So that is all for today, and I will see you all next week. Bye, everyone.